Well, first of all, I'll tell you one specific legacy it did. Danny invented the concept of multiple editing by split screen. And he did it physically. When we came in, I think it was the second year, there was no more audience, so behind the cameras were 4 television monitors. And he sat facing the 4 television monitors, or whoever was directing it. And he would tell the cameras where to go by looking at what they did. And they were recorded in split screen for editing purposes. Nowadays, they do that electronically. Director sits in front of the monitors and watching what every camera's doing, or, you know. Danny invented that, but he did that with actual television sets that he piled one on top of another. He created that and that was all in the effort of not losing control of the show, because a cameraman who's supposed to get to a 2-shot, he has to move. Maybe he was a quarter of a minute or a second late, so it was moving by the time you got. And when you got into the editing room, you had a moving shot all of a sudden, and you don't want it. You want that. You know, you never know unless you see them, and you have them, and that's why Danny would not. That's why he went to that whole system of how to shoot the show. So he had control of every shot. There were no bad shots. You may have seen some peculiar edits, and that would be for time purposes. Sometimes, a show would come in 3 minutes long. You had to cut out, because he never stood with a stopwatch. He just played the scene. And eventually, there may have been some funny cuts, maybe, but he always had control of it. So there was always you see them today, and they're just solid. You couldn't shoot them any better. As far as content, I'm not as down on sitcoms as most people are. Most people say, "Oh, I don't do it, man." Baloney. There are some fine sitcoms. You could watch Seinfeld and Friends and a whole bunch of, that have been done since, and even the ones today. They're well done. They're not. But I think Danny was one of the pioneers. I think the pioneer work of doing a sitcom where that was not over the top. That was realistic. That was real. That's what Joe Wambaugh said. The most realistic cop show. Not only the best, the most realistic, because that's what cops do. They do paperwork. They have to make reports. It's grunt work. It's not the fancy, firing of weapons. And I think it may have been certainly a landmark show like that. That's hard to do that way. It's hard to do. It's easier to be, silly and funny and, nowadays with the obligatory gay character doing gay jokes, it's a lot easier to do that than it is to find a situation. And you know where they got their storylines? They would read the newspapers. Every day they would read the newspaper. Oh, here's a story about a woman in Seattle who had her husband arrested for rape. And they wrote a whole story about that. Right out of reality. I would imagine that should be honored time will honor that. Yeah. In terms of what followed.